So as I mentioned, we're going to focus on understanding and shaping behaviors, talking about the functions, emotional regulation skills, and then how do we work together, as a team within our own environment, focusing on some of the nuances that can help us feel successful. I do not have any relevant financial relationships or disclosures that I need to share. So again, welcome everyone. Our goal for today is to understand the function of different behaviors, learning strategies to promote positive behavior changes, ways to create some supportive, engaging environments. It can be really tough to compete with screens at times. So how do we work with screens? How do we take some of those breaks and get kids back involved? And then just sharing some additional fun, emotional skills and activities. And as I mentioned, you all bring a wealth of knowledge to today's presentation. So please, if there is a technique, a tool, something that has worked for you, for your setting, drop it in the chat. The more that we can gain from that information from each other is so helpful. And we also can share the information from the chat too and send that out if there's other great strategies or people want to have that information as well. All right. And as I mentioned, our goal today is to help understand the reasons behind behaviors, learn some of those proactive strategies, and create environments where kids feel safe, they feel heard, they feel understood. And if we have that combination, we're a lot more likely and motivated to succeed. So starting off with a little icebreaker activity, I would love for you all, using whatever emojis that you may have to your disposal, dropping it in the chat. How are we feeling right now? How are we doing? And it could be a variety of things. I know this is kind of one more thing in your day, so I appreciate you being here. I'm hoping some a bit excited to learn. Hopefully the morning wasn't too stressful. I know it's around 10 o'clock by me, so we may still be feeling a little bit tired going out. But if you could drop in the chat an emoji how we're doing, that can kind of help engage. And this is a nice icebreaker activity that can be done at any type of like Zoom meeting, virtual meeting too, or even just a feeling chart that you may have passing around. Kids can kind of circle, look at, raise their hand. All right, well, I'm looking at some of the chat. Oh, optimistic. Thanks for putting that in. Got some smiley faces, and some Z's. We're feeling content, prepared, ready. Thanks so much. Love to see those smiles on there. All right, so before we kind of get into the more meat of what we're going to talk about, I really just want to highlight that nature and nurture. We think about both nature, the genetics, and nurture, the environment that we're involved in, play a key role in shaping who we are. And this interaction is often the most influential factor when we think about a person's development. And while we may not be able to influence some of the genetic pieces of things, we do have a say in that environment. And as I mentioned, that plays a very, very key role. And this is for both adults and kids, and it influences how we interact with one another. So thinking about building relationships and trust, that's that key to how do we feel safe in an environment. And before we dive into kind of behaviors, we want to build a strong relationship. So we, educators, leaders, partners, aides, teachers, whoever we are, we're more likely to make a positive impact and achieve those goals that we have in mind when we have a strong foundational relationship that is built on trust and respect, mutual respect too. Some of our teens, our kids, our youth aren't used to having respect back and forth from an adult. But we really set the stage in saying we have that mutual respect. And some of the techniques that I really love doing are being that consistent, friendly face. When we smile back and forth, it releases some of those mirror neurons, meaning the other person is more likely to smile back. How do we greet someone by name? Studies show that by greeting someone by name, they're more likely to engage, remember us, and it also feels good. So how can we say hi, bye, and use someone's first name when we see them in the halls, in the classroom, in the setting that we work in? The 1 to 5 rule is that for every negative that comes out, we want to have 5 positives to boost that up, which is tough, especially if there's a certain kid or a certain colleague that it can be hard to maybe find the positives in there. But even just touching them being good. Thanks for walking. I love how you're sitting there. Hey, here's a high five. The 1 to 5 rule is important to remember to build that relationship. And I think too, no one needs to be right in a conversation that we have. Oftentimes when we kind of talk to someone, if they start to get defensive, they shut down, there's shame, there's blame, that relationship really dissolves. That trust kind of goes out the window. And when it comes to working with behaviors and shaping them, if we don't have a solid foundation of relationship and trust, it's going to make things a lot difficult. And so I think we're in a position, a very fortunate position, to be able to hear others' opinions, work with kids, and just praising them for letting us know how they feel, for talking with us is so important. And that can be that first step. Hey, I'm really trying to understand. Hey, I want to work on this. How can we do that? I also want to think about how the environment is shaped. We're going to talk about this a little bit more later on, but the environment plays a critical role in behavior. And when settings are predictable, supportive, and engaging, we're more likely to exhibit positive behaviors. The picture here shows one of the after-school life tools groups that was done in Watoma, and it talks about how when they come to the group after school, the environment is the same. The schedule is the same. There's different fun activities in there. We know we're going to have an activity, but it's all the same. And that helps us feel safe. It helps us reduce our defenses, decrease that anxiety, and give us more control over the environment. And so I thought this was such a nice example of things are organized. They know what to expect coming in, and we know what the agenda is. And when that can be predictable, kids really strive. I'm going to try to, the video on here, we'll show it later, but it talks about a consultant that's going into an after school program. And she asked, what's different about after school or during the school day? And her answer is, it's the same. We want to have the same things that we're implementing during the school day in the after school setting as well. Again, structure, support, consistency, expectations. Just because it's after school doesn't mean that things are kind of going different. Yes, we want to have fun. We want to engage. It doesn't mean we're taking that piece out of it. But some of those key elements of support and consistency are included across settings. And again, when kids have that consistency, they tend to acclimate and adjust better. So thinking a little bit about a first reflection activity for you all, the climate of our school. I think of the vibe, the atmosphere, and the culture, the values and traditions. Think about what that's like for the setting that you're in or that you work with. And we know that, again, a positive school climate and culture are often critical. They foster trust, they foster safety and belonging, which directly impact achievement, engagement, and health. So for you all, and you can drop it in the chat or just kind of reflect on it, but where does your mind go when you arrive to your setting? Are we feeling, oh gosh, another day, I don't know how we're going to make it? When we walk through the doors, do we feel excited? Do we feel happy? Do we feel, hey, we're ready to go? It's another day and I got this. Are we feeling overwhelmed? Do we not even want to go in? Do we pause? Are we showing up last minute? Because being there has a certain sense of feeling. And for you, is this a safe place? I think about for our kids too. How are they feeling when they're walking into a certain setting? Where is their mind going? These could be questions that not only for us to think about, because how we're feeling can make a big impact in how we interact with others, but also potential reflection questions for them as well. How do you feel when you walk through these doors? Do you look forward to after school? Do you feel safe here?
We have two in the chat from Jasmine. Jasmine says she tries to come every day with a positive mind frame and speaking a great day into existence. Yeah. And then another is, I start thinking, what do I need to do first? Am I ready for the day? Ready to go, another day in shaping lives.
Thank you so much for your participation in the chat. That means a lot. And I think that positive mind frame goes such a long way. We know that if we have a positive mindset or a positive outlook, the day tends to go better for whatever activity that may be. I started thinking, like, what do we need to do first? How do we feel prepared? If we feel prepared going into a setting, we're going to feel less stressed and overwhelmed. Shaping lives, absolutely. You all are doing that. All your work is meaningful. And so I think too, think about this question for us can be a helpful reflection or even just a group activity for kids that we're working with as well. So diving into understanding behaviors, I wanted to give a little background about trust and relationships because that is so important. And we have that trust and relationship. It can help us identify the functions behind behaviors more and then intervene. So kind of the next step in this presentation, we're going to look at the 4 functions of behaviors and often thinking how behaviors serve a purpose. Sometimes we're not quite clear what that purpose is, but they serve a purpose. And recognizing that when we can identify the function, it helps guide our intervention. And so we'll talk about that more. So it's kind of a roadmap to help brainstorm a bit. The common functions that we see are attention, escape avoidance, access to a tangible reward, or having that sensory input. So you'll often kind of see things talk about the 4 functions of behaviors. There's books out there, there's literature on it. But ideally, the function is why we do something. What are we getting out of it? What is that reinforcer? As I mentioned, behaviors have a function. There may be multiple ones, but there is something there. And then what we do results in some type of reinforcement or again, a reason why we're doing it. And so when we can start to figure out what that function is, what the reinforcers are, we can shift the environment, we can change our reactions to increase the behaviors, this is a positive one, or decrease it if maybe it's more negative. So for us here today, I think about there could be various functions. One could be, I'd like to gain access to new tools and different resources that then I could use. It could be attention. I'm attending this, so maybe I can share it with my organizations back home. I can present this to gain the attention of others to say, hey, look at this. These are great work that we could do. Sensory stimulation, I think of too, sometimes we're lifelong learners and just hearing more information, learning more information can stimulate us, can make us feel good. Maybe it is avoidance or escape. There's some other meetings going on I'd rather not be at. This kind of sounds like a better choice or option. So again, our functions can be multifaceted. And that's an example of maybe for here today. But thinking about the first one, attention, this is one that often we hear about the most and often can come out of negative behaviors, but we're acting in a certain way to get positive or negative attention. And oftentimes, whether it's positive or negative, it's still attention. So negative behavior, getting in trouble, going in the hall, something taken away could be just as reinforcing because we're getting access to something. Oftentimes it could be related to getting food, electronics, a person, going to a certain area. So when I think about the consequence, and when I mean consequence, this is the outcome. So if following the behavior, it usually involves a person, then it may be attention. So what I mean by this, and this kind of little clip on the bottom, if someone is maybe yelling and screaming, and then, mom or dad, aunt, uncle, whoever it is swoops in to pick them up. Like that could be attention because it's involving another person. So maybe they're getting it that one-on-one time. In a classroom setting, maybe they're saying some silly things or acting out, maybe some inappropriate comments, and other students are laughing. That could be that negative attention we're getting. It could also be, I'm going to put my head down and not do anything with the hope that maybe someone's going to come over to me. Maybe I'll get the extra help that I need without feeling maybe too scared or nervous to raise my hand. So when we think about the ABCs to behavior, the antecedents, the behavior, and the consequence, if the consequence involves another person, especially a consistent person, then that function may be attention. What we could do then after that, is depending on the behavior, if our students are laughing, we try and ignore it. How do we not respond to decrease the likelihood that that's going to happen again? If we do need extra help and we realize it's the same person, how do we maybe introduce other people? How do we build those tools up to advocate for ourselves? But being mindful, again, if there's another person, it's probably attention is the function. This video I'm going to try to share and maybe spend a minute on it. Unfortunately, wasn't able to embed, but it looks at 6-7, which I'm sure we're all familiar with in different forms, but looking at it through the lens of a psychologist as a sense of belonging, as why we may say it. And I thought she had a really good, different perspective that may be considered. I'm going to switch my screen. I'm hoping you all are able to see this. If not, I'll be sure to send the links afterwards as well.
6, 7. Okay, let's talk about why kids are saying this. And I think the narrative out there is just meaningless and it's so stupid. I think it's harmful because I think it misses something important. Sure, 6, 7 is meaningless in content, but it's not meaningless in feeling. Think about when you were a kid. What's more powerful than feeling like you belong? Imagine being in class and a couple kids are laughing when the teacher says, okay, do problem 6 and 7, and they go 6, 7, and now all of a sudden you have a chance to say 6, 7, and maybe you're not even friends with these kids, but in these moments, right in that second, you feel like you belong. That's not meaningless. The 6, 7 is meaningless, but the feeling is so important. If you're finding this annoying in your family, instead of just shutting it down, think about another avenue for your kid to get the feeling they're looking for. Maybe they're kind of saying, I'd like to have some family inside jokes. And they're going to feel eye-rolly at first. They always do. But maybe your kid says, I'm hungry, and you start saying, hi, hungry. Maybe you listen to the same song whenever you clean up after dinner and you always belt the same lyric. Maybe your kid leaves the house and you just start saying something random like, don't let fame change you. And it becomes a habit and it becomes an inside joke. And in your family, your kid feels like we have these special cringe moments that actually make me feel like I have belonging. I think that's what the 6, 7 thing is about.
And I wanted to share that because I think there's a different perspective or way to look at things. And I think Dr. Becky did a nice job of saying, how do we look at behavior through a different lens? How do we maybe say, what is the function behind it? And it could be attention, it could be a lot of different things, but I challenge you all to say, hey, maybe we can look at it differently. And maybe it is that sense of belonging. And I think of too with the sports culture. We may belong to the same team. We may root on the same team. There's a sense of belonging in that. And oftentimes that's the root of acceptance. We think about in different psychological research, the sense of belonging is kind of core to who we are and healthy well-being. Going on to the next function of behavior, we look at kind of escape or avoidance. So when we think about escape learning, it happens when a person kind of learns to avoid an aversive stimulus. So something that they don't like or don't want to happen, and then engage in a specific behavior. So again, the behavior is function to get out of something, whether it's a work demand, a chore, a specific environment. Maybe the cafeteria is kind of too noisy. That can overlap with sensory. Maybe we don't want to be in gym. We don't want to go to math class. That's really hard. We don't like the teacher in this activity. Or it could just be a social situation that's tough to navigate. So again, we think about the consequence, that kind of tip. If there's a change in the environmental contingency, then it may be escape or avoidance. So again, we get that break from a task. We get to have a timeout. We're not going to music. We get to maybe go down to the office or hang out with someone. And so that change in environment could lead or be that escape or avoidance. Oftentimes, again, we may see this with work, outside time, again, our social situations more and more lately. Examples of everyday escape avoidance behavior. So when I think about escape or avoidance, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. And I think that's my goal too. It's not that these functions are bad or we need to avoid them, but we all do them. And so this slide is more so to say, like, innately, we may wear our AirPods because we want to block out different noise. We wear sunglasses because the sun is really bright. Same thing, we may wear sunscreen because we don't want to get burned. We wear shoes on our feet because it's more comfortable than walking like on rocks. So we every day do different things in our daily life that are escape or avoidance behaviors and having something else in place. So again, these things could be happening when we may not even know it. So it can be tricky to identify the function. But oftentimes, again, if there's an environment change, it's shifting an outcome, it could be important to kind of pay attention to. The other aspect is sensory. And I have a picture of a sensory choice board that I use. However, when it comes to sensory, there are hundreds more things that are not included on here. But I think about, again, we may wear headphones because it's too loud. Maybe we need to jump on the trampoline, swing on the swing to regulate our body, to get into a rhythm. How do we play with a bubble ball, a fidget, the Neato cubes, to kind of get that sensory regulation, to maybe calm our nervous system? Bubbles are another great way to kind of, how do we engage in a different piece. So when we think about sensory, it gives us some type of internal and natural reinforcement. It feels good when we do it. So then we want to keep doing it. It could also removing an internal sensation. I feel anxious. I'm feeling nervous. My body, I feel like it's crawling. So I'm going to use a cube. I'm going to swing. I'm going to get deep pressure in some way to help my body feel more calm. Sometimes with some of our autism kiddos too, we may see self-stimulatory behaviors. Again, it's reinforcing it feels good. So how do we say, okay, not that that behavior is good or bad, but hey, if we are doing that, where do we go to a separate space? Or only in certain areas we can do certain things. So again, when we think about the tips or the consequences, if it's occurring in a wide range of settings, could be sensory. If there's a wide variety of consequences that are taking place, it could be sensory. And if it's occurring when a kiddo's alone, it could be sensory. So think about attention often happens with other people. Escape or avoidance, there's a change usually in a certain environment. But when it comes to sensory, it can happen across different people, settings, the spaces that we're in. And so that may give you a clue that maybe we need to look at something a little bit differently. And having choice boards to point to can really help kids have a sense of control and communicate what they may be feeling, as it can be really difficult to put into words. So thinking of a grounding and sensory activity that could be done during meetings with other kids in classes, or even just one-on-one with someone. It's based off of the grounding technique of mindfulness of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where we tap into our different senses to help regulate and literally ground ourselves to feel more calm. I like to break it down a little bit into the 3, 2, 1, where for you all, thinking about 3 things you see, 2 things that we may feel that are close by to us, and something that we may smell. So still tapping into our senses, but making it a little bit more narrow. So I think for me, I see you all. When I look around, I have kind of my water bottle that's nearby. I also have my trusty little Post-it notes that I often use. So 3 things that I see. I think about things that I feel. I do have a kind of a fidget on the side that sometimes I will use during sessions. I do have a blanket by me. So that's kind of something I feel is kind of rough and soft. Anyone want to drop something that they see, feel, or smell into the chat? Doesn't have to be 3 things, but if there's one thing close by that you see or you feel, or if there's a cool fidget that you have nearby, please share that. Thinking about as well, a nice empathy activity to put ourselves in someone else's shoes is really just saying if there's something sensory wise that maybe is aversive to you that you don't like. It could be, I don't like the texture of something. I don't like the sound of something, the feel. Again, it could be bright lights, loud noises. And then trying to think of that, which often will have this visceral response. Like we may get the chills. We may feel uncomfortable. And that could be, again, a nice way or a nice empathy building activity to say, hey, I kind of feel what you're going through, not exactly know what you're going through. For myself, it's those styrofoam cubes that they used to use in packing. And if I see them, I get the chills. If they touch each other, whew. And so to me, I think about that experience when I'm working with someone that may have a strong sensory aversion to something, knowing how debilitating it could be. Okay.
There are all kinds in the chat. We have, I see a book painting a rainbow. I have a Rubik's Cube. We have somebody with kinetic sand. A stress ball I use when I'm feeling overwhelmed. I have a fidget spinner. I was going to say I smell my coffee.
Oh, that's
it's sitting
stuff.
Right next to me.
Nice. And for us too, these techniques are so important to say, how do we stay grounded? How do we get through the day? Okay. Thank you. The next function we think about is access. So how do we get access to something? So doing something to access something tangible. Whether it's oftentimes I think about, again, it could be electronic, it could be food, it could be a toy, it could be an item, all of those things. So again, if the function of the behavior could be access, if they're then giving it. The consequence, so the outcome is a break or attention, but consistently involves access to that item or that preferred, again, person. So oftentimes I see this at home with electronics or screens. How do we maybe kick, scream, whine, complain to be able to get something? Or I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. How do we do something to then get attention where someone maybe kind of is giving in? But kind of thinking too, what may that look like in your setting if they consistently get access to a certain object or item? With this being said, again, my goal is to talk about these functions. Again, not that they're negative, but also saying, how can we use that as maybe a reinforcer? So if there is something that a kiddo really does want or maybe acts out to get, could we use that as first we need to do X, then we can go outside and go on the swing. First we need to do this, then we can have that snack. So using that preferred item that they're maybe trying to get in a positive way. And then that also helps show them, hey, I will get access to this. I don't need to yell and scream. I don't need to throw something. I don't need to go hide in the corner. Look at, if I do this, then we can have it. Another kind of activity, I think about think, pair, and share. Think about a recent challenging behavior that maybe you observed. Don't have to go into all the details. But why do you think, or what do you think the child was trying to communicate? Is there something that was kind of going on? I think about sometimes in like telehealth sessions, there may be, oh, I need to go get something. I need to go get something. So there's maybe some like avoidance of being on the screen or talking about something that's going on by like stalling or getting something else. Sometimes I think when kiddos maybe super like silly or off task, there's usually a lot of redirection, so there's attention. But again, there may be avoidance, or maybe it's their way of saying, okay, fine, just have this. And it could just be also sharing if there's a function to a behavior that you've seen more recently. I've seen a lot of access trying to get something, or, it's been more attention seeking in our environment. Or maybe there's just been a lot of sensory aspects that we just started to notice more that we're trying to address. So again, if there's a recent challenging behavior you observed, again, was a child trying to communicate something, or is there a function of the behavior that you're seeing more often? Whether that is attention, escape, avoidance, or sensory. I think I tend to see more attention behaviors because it can be tricky to kind of communicate and get our thoughts and words into feelings. And so that tends to come out. But continue to think about that. The goal with learning about the functions is that we can start to potentially recognize behavior patterns. And that again can help it make it more easily where we can intervene. So observing behavior carefully, again, allows us to identify its purpose. Are they acting out to avoid work? If they are, okay, we still need to get the work done. Just because they're not doing this activity doesn't mean it goes away forever. But how do we bring it back in? If it is to get attention to a certain person, how do we say, hey, maybe we can see this person, or hey, maybe we can give a high five, to Mr. Smith at the beginning of the day, instead of trying to kind of kick and scream and then go down to his office later. So once we start to understand the why, our responses can be more effective and supportive. And this can be tricky. Again, as I mentioned, sometimes there's multiple functions. It's not easy to figure out. But if there are certain behavior patterns, time of day, the same person, a certain setting, access to the same thing, that can help give us nice clues. So I have a couple of examples of pictures where I'm going to ask the same question. What might this behavior be communicating? And again, if you have a comment in the chat, please drop it, or you can reflect on it too. But if we maybe have a little boy who's maybe isolating himself, not wanting to participate,
may feel alone, avoidance,
Yeah.
feeling sad and alone.
Mhm. Oh,
Missing parents.
yeah. Those are all good. And I think this is this is a great example of how, again, we look at a behavior. We can interpret it in different ways. I think we're all in the same theme of like something's going on. He's not looking too happy. He's by himself, he's isolated a bit. But it could be nothing to do necessarily with that environment. We're missing our parents. We're just thinking about them. It could be upset about something maybe that happened right before this. It could be avoiding a certain activity or event that's kind of going on. So I'm gonna go by myself. Or we could be feeling sad and alone for various reasons. And it might be a scary new place. I think of this transition from school to summer school, or different kiddos kind of transitioning to before and after school programs, given summer starting up soon. Things are new. We may have new teachers, a new schedule, a new routine. All of that can impact why you may want to be by yourself or take some space away. Okay. Then, yeah, it could be nonverbal. Yeah, we may not be able to put what we're thinking or feeling into words. So this is how we're going to communicate. And that is, check, there's another layer when we're nonverbal too. Thanks. All right. Thinking of this behavior a bit, you all did a great job kind of putting in the chat for the other ones. What maybe are we thinking? To me, my initial response is, okay, it could be like angry, like he's yelling. However, it could be like, I'm super excited. Like we're playing a game outside and this is my outside voice. And I'm letting everyone know that like 3, 2, 1, wherever you're at, here I come. I think the setting matters. Think attention. Yeah. I want attention in some form or another. Could be angry. I don't know how I'm feeling inside. I just do not like what's happening right now. He could be singing really loudly. Yeah. Could be sensory too, I think of as well. Like I don't like when other people are maybe loud, but I project my voice very loudly. How do I get that out? Nice work. Oh, and these behaviors. What might this be communicating? Someone's kind of smiling. It looks like there may be like a tablet, iPad. Other kiddo doesn't look as happy as the one maybe with a smile on their face. Like this can be quite common with siblings, with our younger kiddos. Yeah, feeling left out. Hopefully everyone. So thinking about these scenarios, there could be lots of things. It could be he took it from the other kiddo. It could be maybe he got access to it because he finished something first and the other kiddo didn't finish it. It could just be a set amount of time and he just doesn't like that he has it. So thinking if there's a certain scenario that how you may respond. And you can pick a scenario, whether it's scenario A, B, C. What might you do? I like, Erika, how you mentioned he could be reading a story off his tablet. Yeah. And they could both be enjoying listening to that story. And he could be having a reaction to something in the story or video. You're welcome. I think sometimes for us, when we look at scenario C, that may be easier to respond to because we may have a more clear sense of the function. Something's going on that we may not like. So how do we kind of approach it? How do we hopefully get him talking? If he's nonverbal, is there a visual that we could use? Can we redirect to a setting that maybe is at the table where we can talk back and forth, or maybe a certain space that he likes? Let's go over to the beanbag. Let's go over to the swings and we can just kind of parallel swing next to each other. And how do we kind of understand, hey, what's up? For scenario B, if it's attention, do we ignore a little bit? Do we have a visual reminder that says, hey, this is what we do or not do? If we're super excited, I love the excitement. Hey, buddy, that is so awesome. And we got to use our inside voice. If it's scenario A, depending on what we think is going on, can we redirect the other kid who doesn't have the tablet or iPad to something different? If the older kid, it looks like maybe took it from him, how do we give the item back to someone else and then redirect? Go outside and sing. Yeah, he wants to hold the tablet. What's bothering you? I like these open-ended questions. I think that's so important. What's bothering you? I often like, hey, what's up? I may model something that I'm seeing. I feel like kids do a really good job of telling us when we're wrong. No, I'm not mad. I'm sad. Oh, awesome. Okay, thanks for letting me know. You're feeling sad. Yeah, why are we feeling this way? What can we do? Yeah, finding an appropriate spot to yell and sing. I love your singing, but hey, we got to do this over here. Hi. Nice work. So we talked about the importance of the environment, more so with that consistency, structure, routine, and those expectations, but also then how do we set it up in a way that's inclusive? How do we have those clear expectations and routines somewhere where we can see? How do we have that visual that we can reference? How do we keep it consistent and predictable the best that we can? Life happens. But then having a safe space for emotional expression. And that could include having feeling charts, having ways to talk about our feelings, any reminders that you think could be helpful, maybe that you reference a lot to let kids know that this is a space where you are safe, you are cared for, you are loved, and you are supported. Thinking about if there's potentially a brief example of a time when the environment that you had maybe influenced a behavior. So I think about, and doesn't have to be a long-winded response, but if there's a calm space that you had and it helped a kid settle down. We had a visual routine that we put in place, maybe on their desk or on their cubby area that helped prevent frustrations when going to the next task. We play a song before we have to clean up or end. We just dim the lights a little bit. We put on white noise, and that's kind of part of our chill wind down time. But if you have an example of something that you did to shift the environment, could be the layout of it or something else that was helpful, let us know, because there's so many different ways that we can influence the environment too. And as I mentioned, learning from each other, I think is so helpful. And these are also things that may be helpful too. And if there's something too that you're doing that you notice, I would share that with their caregivers too. Hey, I've noticed that, it's really helpful when we come back and he has a snack right away. Or, we always kind of dim the lights, and that tends to relax his body a little bit. It could be something to kind of try at home. Or just kind of sharing the observation of, hey, I think this is maybe helping him with this part of the routine. Visual supports and routine mapping are so important. As adults, we can more quickly pick up information when there's visuals. When there's visuals in slides and presentations, we tend to remember them better. But for kiddos too, they're visual learners. Even adults, we just process it more quickly. If you have a red sign, we're going to associate that with stop. If we have the word stop on there without a red sign, that's going to take us longer to mentally process. So thinking about different transitions or times in your day where maybe there could be more visuals or references. Or if there's a time where you're like, hey, this has really helped to use visuals, let us know. I like having the afternoon tasks for some kids that could be used again at schools, at home, having a daily schedule. It could be as detailed or as not. Pictures and words or just pictures. But I like the expectation. And the cool things about visual schedules is you can kind of cross them off if they're laminated. If they're Velcro, like some of the ones that I have, I just take the pieces off, meaning that it's all done. There's different ways to incorporate the completion of different tasks, where we're at, and what is coming next. So again, if there's a certain spot that you're like, oh, hey, I was meaning to make this, or hey, this is kind of challenging for our kids. A visual schedule or support could be something to consider. This is another example of kind of like a visual choice to keep working. What I like about this one is it also kind of can tap into that escape or avoidance behavior. So if we have a kiddo who's kind of putting off doing a certain task, that's kind of part of our routine, we have these two choices. We have kind of work to do, or we have this music, this activity, choices. We could kind of do our work, kind of keep working. And then, hey, we get choice time. That's that reward. How do we get access to maybe that preferred item that they may negatively be getting attention for? Or, oh, we may get bored. We may not want to do it. We're throwing it on the ground. We're refusing. Then we still have the work. It still needs to get done. And we don't get this maybe cool thing. So there's choices. We're giving autonomy back, but we laid it out. And this can be a nice thing, again, if we have a picture of what they enjoy or a picture of a sensory object, a picture of, again, a person, a place, we can have that little choice for that they can pick from too. And that can sometimes be more motivating when they can see exactly what they may be getting or working towards. Building emotional regulation skills. I'm sure you all are experts in this area, but I couldn't have a talk about shaping behavior without talking about some of our emotional regulation tools and ways to make it fun. How do we have, again, feeling charts. I like acting out how we're feeling. This is a really fun emotional charades too, where you can cut them out. You can have Velcro pieces. You can pick them out of a bin. You can put them on like a TV screen as like almost like flashcards, and they can use a spinner and they can pick it. But how would you act out like losing at a game? Act out, maybe squishing a spider. Can the other person guess the feeling? Maybe even, stepping it up a notch, like guessing what they're doing. But the goal is to guess the feeling that they have or the emotion. And this is a great way to build that emotional identification, but also for kids to pick up on nonverbal cues of other people too. A tool that I use all the time, every single day, is the 3 good things. Study came out of Duke University, oh boy, probably 10 plus years ago, that looked at thinking of at least like one positive a day for 30 days. Thinking of it. This is going to take 2 seconds. And what they noticed is that the group that thought of one positive a day compared to the control group who did not were more optimistic. They were happier, reported more positive things in their life, and they tend to think about more good things. So when you think about a good thing, you tend to like smile and talk about it. So we've embedded this into some of our after school curriculums. But I challenge you all, and this is a great, again, activity to do with staff, with our kiddos. It's like, what's one good thing? It could be anything. Eating something, watching something, going somewhere, the weather. It could be the day is over. It doesn't matter what it is. Just one good thing from the day. And thinking about that. So I challenge you all to think of one good thing. It doesn't have to be from today. It could be from like the past week or so. But one good thing that you can think of. I say my one good thing is I was really excited for this presentation today. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad to see the great participation. So thank you all for being here and for participating. That's definitely my good thing for the day. But other good things. Bike ride this morning. Nicely done. This class. Thanks. Other good things. Taking care of yourself, a walk or exercise is so important. The other thing I think of is like the sun shining by me. And I just feel like when the sun's out, it helps make it be a good day. Makes you think about warmer weather on the way. So this tool can be used again as a brainstorm, an icebreaker, but just one good thing. And the cool part is oftentimes when kids get into the rhythm of doing it, then they think about more. I always try and challenge to think of 3 good things. And it could be a tool that you could also share at home for kids to do at the dinner table, thinking about a good thing before bed to tend to help reduce like worry thoughts as well. Daycare kiddos are still with us, playing with the kids. Yeah. Meditation every morning. If you can build that into your routine, nicely done. Learning new ways to talk with adult behaviors. Absolutely. Our goal is to kind of how do we learn from each other? So thinking about a couple of tips for littles, and I want to be mindful of time at the end too. So if you see younger kids, when we see a child showing an emotion, it's important to try and label it. Oh, I see tears are coming down. Oh, I wonder if we're feeling sad. What's up? Thinking about characters. Oh no, Marshall looks so worried that Sky's going to get hurt. Look at him. And how do we interact again through singing, puppets, songs, Play-Doh, shaving cream? We can again draw smiley faces, draw sad faces, make it interactive. For toddlers and more of our school age kiddos, they're starting to learn and understand those feelings a little bit more. Again, talking about them with other people, things or shows that they like, increasing the books, the depth of books with some interactions and interventions. The Little Spot series has been around for a while, but I love it because it has coping strategies in there and interventions in there that can be practiced while you're learning. But then modeling, that's a bit of that charades piece. Oh, you look like really nervous. Or in saying, hey, I feel nervous when this happens. Does this ever happen to you? Sometimes opening up can be a nice way to have other kids feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and feelings. And the zones of regulation are popular across a lot of different schools or settings. There's lots of free visuals out there. But a feeling does colors. As we mentioned, it's easier to notice a visual compared to thinking about maybe how we're feeling. So if a kid can tell me that they're feeling blue, hey, I get it in the sense that, okay, I can help intervene. You don't need to go into all the details of maybe feeling sad, tired. They do, wonderful. Or I'm feeling red. I'm red. Oh, okay, we're red. Red means we're going to go take a break over here. So learning about feelings through different colors is a good way to start. And even having, again, a choice board with these different colors on there may help a kiddo be able to communicate how they're feeling and what they need. When we think about incorporating additional playful, engaging activities, like minute to minutes can be really fun. How many post-its can we put on someone? If we're looking at, again, a new summer activity, new kids to the group, or just, hey, here's another thing we can do. The cup stacking, the other little kiddo over here has like a straw and he's blowing these little pom-poms off. How many can you blow within a minute? How many dice can you balance with a popsicle stick? So there's different things out there to kind of make it fun. And more so that is that building that relationship, building that trust, having fun together. And then it could be more of a work activity. But how do we kind of increase that engagement? Drawing our feelings out can be so important, especially in a day and age when it can be tough to talk. And a lot of our communication is for some of our youth by text, online. How do we draw, have a journal, dance out our feelings, put on some songs to say, okay, we're here. We're here to try to understand, but hey, if you just need your own space, that's fine too. Some groups I know will have their own like journals for each kids, and then they can draw, color, write in it, as they wish to. And how do we kind of make the change meaningful and lasting? And so I want to kind of wrap up. This is a cool picture of a celebration of an A session of an after school group through life tools. They're able to celebrate with pizza. So again, we want to have those positive reinforcement strategies. And so we'll go over these 4 and then we will wrap up for today. So one of the first reinforcement strategies, we think of our positive praise. And this is something that I encourage everyone to do or catch them being good, the best that we can. Thank you for walking nicely. I really liked how you pushed in your chair. Good job at, finishing that craft and throwing that in the garbage. Wow, this looks beautiful. Oh, you did so good out there running on the playground. I really appreciate how you didn't kind of push him back. Hey, thumbs up for making a good choice. When you were raising your hand, that was awesome. I really appreciate that. So how do we build into these statements? It also could be more concrete areas, such as a reward chart, or we're earning different rewards or stickers. Natural consequences often occur without an adult intervention. So I think of the little visual at the bottom. If we're running really fast, we may trip and fall. If we don't tie our shoe, we may step on it. If we break something, it won't work. Natural consequences tend to have very long-lasting impacts, tend to be I would say most meaningful in the sense of like, I don't want to do that again. However, it can be tricky to implement them because, like I said, it's without our intervention. But having those reminders too. So again, it is a reinforcement strategy when a natural consequence happens and talking about that. Celebrating small successes. I'm a huge proponent of celebrating the mini milestones and just being there, just being here today. Like that's a success. That's a win. Having them use their words. Thanks for letting me know how you felt. Making safe choices. Hey, that was great that you weren't like jumping off of there today. That was a really safe choice. Thanks for doing that. Or trying something new. It takes a lot of courage to try something new. It takes a lot of courage to talk about your feelings. And so praising them for doing that. And then the longer, deeper one, is that intrinsic motivation. How do we help encourage independent thinking, creative play, joining them, not kind of taking over, and encouraging them to reflect on their accomplishments? One of the phrases that I think about a lot is, like you should be so proud of yourself. We can say that we're proud of them, but ideally, like I want you to be proud of you for what you did. So we can encourage and kind of point out the hard things they did, overcoming challenges, the successes that they have. That helps build that intrinsic motivation, which helps build self-efficacy, which is ultimately their sense of how they feel about their abilities. So again, thinking about positive reinforcement strategies, if there's one that you use in your setting, let us know. It could be food, it could be activities and jumping, it could be sounds, items, people, but different ways to tap into the different functions while celebrating the good things that they're doing or the accomplishments that they're making. And last but not least, I'd encourage you all to think about a reflection activity, more so with a certain action step. So is there something that you want to try or take away? I'd love to maybe build that visual, or hey, I'm going to work on more of that positive praise, or hey, I'm going to really try and figure out why this kiddo may be acting a certain way. I really want to hone in on the function. So that would be my kind of call to action for you all, is saying what is one specific maybe action step that I can take away or try. And with that being said, when we think about reviewing, repeating, retaining what was shared today, we think about positive environments, promote success and emotional regulation. And when we can identify the function to a behavior, it's really going to help guide the intervention. Think about activities not only teach emotional and behavioral skills, but also make it enjoyable. It builds that relationship. If we're having fun, the behaviors are likely going to decline. And we think about how do we remain consistent? How do we provide that positive feedback? And ultimately, those small steps, little changes, can lead to big improvement that can be long lasting. Teachers Pay Teachers, again, is a great website. I really appreciate it because there's a lot of free resources on there. And I would say nearly everything in here, you could probably type in, again, functions to behavior chart, access to a visual after school schedule, first then, what am I looking for? And amazing people have probably created similar visuals. So I just think it's a great resource to have. They also have data sheets, you can track the function, but I think Teachers Pay Teachers is a great resource. And again, they have a lot of free options on there for visuals. Here's more of my resources and supports that are more evidence-based on here. And as I mentioned, there'll be a copy of the PDF PowerPoint that we will send out, so you will have access to this. And I can send the Duke study as well with the 3 positives. And last but not least, I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all for the great work that you are doing within your communities and after school settings. And I thank you all for your participation. You did a great job. And so with that, I have my number on the screen. Feel free to save it. You can give me a call. My email address is available as well. And Jesse also has a copy of it. I know it's kind of long, or if you wanted to screenshot this. But I apologize for kind of going right up to the end, but I will stay on for any questions that you may have for me. Again, that concludes our presentation, and thank you all so much for joining and participating.